Welcome back to PipeCast in a special month-long series we're going to be calling Comparisons. Uh, in this first episode, we're actually going to harken back to 2007 when Joe Langford and the Seattle Pipe Club created in a microblend form the very special, very potent kitchen sink Balkan English plum pudding. And I think everyone in the world knows about plum pudding if you're a part of the pipe smoking community.
Yeah.
It's one of the most popular English blends of recent creation.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone is familiar with Nightcap. People are familiar with Penzance and Artisan's Blend.
HH Latakia flake.
HH Latakia Flake. I'm trying to think of another really good, really strong. Quiet Nights is a really good, really strong.
Balkan
English.
Sobrani.
Balkan Sobrani is another really good one.
I mean, you said strong, right?
Refer to another episode of Filler for our opinions on Balkan Sobrani as created by J.F. Germains and Sons. But yeah, so plum pudding I think is probably the most popular. We'll call it Balkan for the rest of this series, just to kind of keep that sort of naming convention traditional to what I think they call it. It's probably the most popular Balkan blend of recent memory and recent pipe smoking history. 07 is not that long ago by comparison. I know that we're more than a decade into its creation and smoke, but it's very popular. So in that vein, the plum pudding has a couple of iterations. It has barrel aged, special reserve, and then special reserve flake, and then of course what we're smoking today, which is just the traditional plum pudding. And what we wanted to do is do a comparison of all four against what we consider the normal mark, which is just regular plum pudding, and see how they stack up. Each episode is just going to go into that, and this entire month of November is really going to just be about plum pudding.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, it's Thanksgiving, and I think as far as the fullest you can get outside of eating an entire turkey is smoking plum pudding with tobacco.
Yeah. Yeah, and so this one being the original plum pudding, this is going to be sort of the pilot episode for the rest of them. So let's take a look at the blend real quick. All right. Here we have Seattle Pipe Club's plum pudding. When it comes, it's in this nice little crumble cake here, and as you break it up, you can sort of rub it out into, nice little, almost like ribbon cut. Now the components are Black Cavendish, Latakia, Oriental Turkish, Perique, and Virginia. So what we have here is we have some Black Cavendish, and then as far as the Virginias go, I'm not sure what the proportion is, if it's a little bit of bright and a lot of red, or if it's no bright and just red. But based on what is light in here and the fact that there is Turkish Izmir, I'm almost betting that there is no bright, but if there is, it's only a small bit, and the majority of the Virginia is red, and it very well could be stoved and things like that, but I believe it's majority red. Then we have Perique, like I said, Turkish Izmir, and then Latakia. And it's a really dark blend, and I don't know, that's probably majority Latakia and Black Cavendish, but there are some light pieces in here, which I think probably are, closer to the Oriental and the Red Virginia, and then there's some spots of lighter brown, which could be the Perique, and even some of the dark could be some Perique, but I think this is really heavy-handed with the Latakia and the Black Cavendish, and not heavy-handed in a bad way. It's just it dominates this profile here. But let's go back over and talk about the blend real quick. So as we can see, the original plum pudding is a crumble cake. I really like the crumble cake, cut. It's not my favorite, but I like it in the essence that it's just you don't see it every day. And I know Seattle Pipe Club is big on it. We did Wild Man a few years back, and I believe it was a crumble
It was
cake.
a crumble cake as well.
The only issue I have with crumble cake, and it's the same issue I sort of have with plugs and such, is that it needs some drying time for me, like pretty much all the time. And well, the positive, or where it sort of has a leg up on a plug, is that it is still easier to load. I mean, you just crumble it up, kind of like what you would do with a flake if you rubbed it out, or with any kind of ribbon cut. You just sort of you just once you get it broken up, you load it. Plug, you gotta sit there and do all that mess. But this one is a crumble cake. I think it's a very attractive looking blend. There's certain blends you look at and they're like, man, that your mouth waters kind of. You look at Full Virginia Flake from Samuel Gawith and you're like, yep, that's amazing. Or you look at any of the German, Scandinavian blends, those sticks of gum, right? This is in the same vein. It's looks like a little old, I don't know, sort of like a brownie, kind of thing, and it's an attractive blend. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that you kind of hit it right there. It does seem like sort of like grandma's brownies at the church bake sale.
Yeah.
Just the fat ones that you see, and you're just like, okay.
Real soft.
Yeah, and you're sort of automatically drawn to it if you're a brownie person.
Mm-hmm.
This is. I mean, it feels like when I see it, it's almost like everything's just maxed out. Maxed Latakia, maxed flavor, maxed profile, maxed everything. It's just like sort of like, I feel like it's harkening back to like that like late 90s, early 2000s extreme era. Everything was extreme. Like it sort of feels like that's where Plum Pudding came out of, is that it's like it's extreme. Everything is so extreme. And, I think that like that potency and kind of like to the max flavoring really gives Plum Pudding all of the that momentum that and the reason why I think it's such a strong contender for a Balkan blend today. This ain't your granddaddy's plug.
No.
Is what they really should market it as, I think, because it does feel like some super strong. If it were any stronger, like a pirate cake or like a Commonwealth, I would almost sort of mock it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it is like one of those things where it's like, oh, I smoke it's XYZ,
Yeah.
and it's sort of a flex or a kind of, I can handle really stout tobacco.
Mm-hmm. What's funny about it, when I think of Balkans, even though like Artisan's Blend kind of is a Balkan, it's always up for debate what Balkan and all that stuff. We've talked about it with many of times, but when somebody says the word Balkan, Plum Pudding's the first thing that comes to my mind every time.
And I think that's pretty good. I think that's actually the ultimate compliment to Seattle Pipe Club, because I don't think you should have a blend a little over a decade old being the first thing you think of when you say a blend,
Especially when the namesake of Balkan,
right.
is still out there.
It's still, yeah.
Well, a version of it.
A variant, yeah. I mean, it is funny to me that, like, I will say English.
Yeah.
Nightcap really does come to mind pretty quickly.
Yep.
Nightcap, Artisan's Blend. These are blends that have been around a hot minute, And you say Balkan, I'm actually a little bit more hesitant to say Plum Pudding, but I totally get where you're coming from. But the irony is I also find Quiet Night peeks its head out, and it's also a relatively new blend.
Yeah.
So it's almost like the Balkans of yesteryear are really being overshadowed, if they're even still in existence, to these kinds of blends.
Yeah.
I think Plum Pudding is a really good staple for what you should be aiming for if you're trying to create a really pleasurable but strong smoke in the Balkan. And when I say Balkan, I mean, Balkan is such a weird thing to define. I do consider a Balkan, to me, as like a kitchen sink blend.
Yeah.
because I don't think traditional Englishes typically have Perique in them, and I don't think that they're like so heavy on the Latakia. And I feel like those are two things that I find in Balkan blends, is that they have a very pungent Latakia,
Yep.
Cyprian or otherwise.
Yeah.
You're not going to find a lot of Syrian Latakia, period, but
No.
pretty pungent Cyprian Latakia, and it's going to have, from what I gather, some Perique in there.
Yeah.
And with, of course, Plum Pudding, it doesn't just have those two markers on it, but it also has a creaminess that comes from the Cavendish.
Mm-hmm.
And that creaminess, I think, is what helps set it apart in terms of people being gravitated towards it. That's why I don't think that this is your pirate cake. This is not your Commonwealth. This isn't your Morning Star
Yeah.
or Star of the East. It is. It got a creaminess and a balance that I think comes out with not just blending technique, not just Oriental Latakia, Virginia, etc., but there's some other things going on with your Cavendish,
Yeah.
with your Perique,
Yeah.
that really does put this into a spot of its own.
Yeah. It is a perfect example of being able to throw everything at it, but still finding a way to not like overdo it in a way. Even though it is a very extra blend, they don't overdo it. And you talking about it being kind of the most extra of extra, to me that does not bode well for the other three that we're about to do.
Oh yeah, I know.
Because something about sort of caveat it with that, it's like, well, I mean, anything more you do to it, I mean, what do you know?
How do you add to something that does seem right?
Yes, yeah.
And that I think that's probably the best comparison you can say. Now I know that people have a tendency, so we're going to talk about, and we'll get into it as I want to get into it when we get into it. I want to go into it fresh, but I do want there's going to be a little bit of history behind it. So the barrel aged aspect, I think, is a direct descendant of not just a culture of bourbon and whiskey that is specifically in the South and in America. We have kind of a bourbon obsession, right?
Yeah.
And but I think that lends itself to the sort of, oh, that's interesting, but less so than what McClellan's did with Frogmorton Cellar, in which they actually put, I think they actually cut up pieces of, I can't remember now, I think oak,
Yeah.
maybe oak barrel or hickory or something, and they actually put it in with the Frogmorton Cellar, and the idea was to cellar the tobacco with that wood stave.
Yeah.
And allow it and the tobacco to sort of mature together and give you like sort of a different characteristic.
Really going for that whiskey bourbon.
Right, exactly. And so I'm thinking that is where Seattle Pipe Club got their idea from.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of just the fact that people are obsessed with whiskey to a certain extent in the States, and because I'm pretty sure Mississippi River has the same thing, except it's with rum, a rum barrel.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right.
So, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see if that actually lends itself to it. I would be hard pressed to see that it would do any difference, because I think plum pudding really is something that plum pudding feels good enough that you don't need to add to it.
No.
I mean, if I were going to change up the formula for plum pudding, which I'm not going to be capable of, and you'll know why in just a second, but I would think that you would want to rotate out Cyprian Latakia for Syrian if that was a possibility, which I don't think it is.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I might do is the variant Cavendish. So there's the American Cavendish versus the European Cavendish. I would trade those out to see if that steaming or sugaring aspect that comes with the different types of Cavendishes and how they're created with the some are created, I think, with different types of tobacco.
Yeah.
Typically it's a steamed sugared Virginia in Europe. I would like to see if trading out the Cavendishes would actually create some sort of difference.
Yeah.
typically a blender would have already gone through the motions of
Yeah.
that. So this would be my own curiosity, and I'm assuming that Joe Langford basically already has gone through this, and there's no sense in developing it any further.
No.
And that's the great thing about like speculation and blending, though, is like I can speculate all I want, but I have a confidence in the blender that they probably already went through the motions to do this, and that
Yeah.
they arrived at this conclusion.
Yeah.
And this is what we're smoking.
Yeah, and yeah, but I don't really have much more to add to plum pudding other than there's a reason why everybody likes it. There's a reason why it's talked about. So what'll be interesting is how we move forward
Right.
with this.
And I mean, I think that since we're doing this episode and you guys are watching, we recommend plum pudding, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think just by watching this, you know that. However, we want to see what the Seattle Pipe Club is going to offer with these different, if not similar, blends with, be it like a higher quality tobacco or a barrel aged process, maybe to see if that's gimmicked or not. I have a sneaking suspicion that I have a conclusion already.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if I'm right, and I won't be giving that conclusion until the last episode.
Okay.
My original thought,
Okay.
and then we'll see where we land. But plum pudding, amazing blend. Definitely check it out.
Yeah. So we'll see you next time. See y'all.